John Clarkson stepped out of the shower, drying his short, blonde hair with a towel. Morning light streamed through the bathroom window, reflecting off the white tiles. He glanced at his watch, 6:45 am, time to get ready. Today was an important day, a presentation on a new project at work, and he wanted to double-check everything. At 38, John was proud of his career as an engineer at Harris Construction. His job provided his family with a cozy home in the Chicago suburbs, a good school for his daughter Emily, and even annual trips to Lake Michigan. He walked down to the kitchen, which already smelled of coffee. Linda, his wife, was standing at the stove, stirring oatmeal. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a neat bun, and she was wearing the same pink sweatsuit she wore to yoga. Emily, their 8-year-old daughter, was sitting at the table, scrolling through something on her tablet. "Morning, sunshine," John said, leaning down to kiss the top of Emily's head. She smelled of strawberry-scented shampoo. "What are you looking at?" "A video about puppies," Emily replied, not taking her eyes off the screen. "Dad, can we have a dog?" John chuckled and looked at Linda, who rolled her eyes. "We've been over this, Em," Linda said, setting a bowl of oatmeal in front of her daughter. "Dogs are a lot of work. Cleaning, walking, hair everywhere. We have enough to do as it is." "But I'll clean up," Emily pouted. "Dad, tell her." John poured himself some coffee from the coffee pot and sat down at the table. "Maybe we can think about it later, Em, when you're a little older," he winked, trying to soften the refusal. Linda gave him a look he knew all too well. It was the look that said, "You're indulging her again." John shrugged and took a sip of coffee. He was used to moments like this. Linda had always been one for strict rules, and he liked to spoil Emily a little. "John, are you late today?" Linda asked, wiping her hands on a tea towel. "I have yoga until 6. Then I'm meeting the girls from the book club. Emily needs to be picked up from school at 3. "I can handle it," John replied, opening his laptop to check the presentation. "We have a big day at work today. If everything goes smoothly, I might get a bonus." "That would be nice," Linda said, her voice softening slightly. "I've been eyeing a new sofa for the living room. The one we have is looking a bit tired." John nodded, not looking up from the screen. He knew Linda loved renovating the house. She hadn't worked since Emily was born, and her world revolved around her family, her home, and social media. Linda loved posting photos of their life. Emily at dances, family dinners, their garden with its perfectly trimmed grass. John didn't mind. He liked that she was happy, even though he sometimes felt like she took his efforts for granted. "Dad, will you come to my concert next Saturday?" Emily asked, putting her tablet down. "We're going to sing a song about the stars." "Of course, honey. I won't miss it," John smiled. "Have you learned all the words yet?" "Almost." Emily straightened up proudly. "But there is one line where I always mix up the words." "Let's practice tonight," John suggested. "I'll be your spectator." Linda placed a plate of toast and eggs in front of him. "Don't forget, we're having dinner with the neighbors on Saturday," she reminded me. "I promised we'd bring dessert. Maybe we could order something from Sweet Pete." "Expensive dessert?" John raised an eyebrow. "Maybe you'll bake your apple pie? Everyone loves it." Linda grimaced. "Pie is a hassle. I don't want to hang around in the kitchen all day. Let's order it, it's easier." John didn't argue. He knew Linda liked everything to look perfect, even if it meant spending more money. He made enough money to afford such little things, but sometimes it irritated him that she didn't appreciate his work. He pushed the thought away and focused on his food. After breakfast, John helped Emily pack her backpack. She chatted about her friend Sarah, who wanted to have a slumber party. "Can I go, Dad? Please?" Emily folded her hands in a pleading gesture. "We'll ask Mom," John said, tying her shoelaces. "But if she agrees, I need to know there will be adults there." "Daddy, I'm not a baby anymore," Emily said indignantly. "You'll always be my baby." John patted her head, and she giggled. Linda walked into the hallway with the car keys. "Let's go, Emily. John, you pick her up at 3, don't forget." "I won't forget," he replied, checking his phone. There was a message from a colleague. The presentation is ready, the boss is delighted. Don't let me down, John smiled. Everything should go perfectly today. John was in his element at the Harris construction office. His team was working on a new shopping center project, and he was responsible for key engineering calculations. In the conference room, he confidently explained slides to answer questions from a client. "Good job, Clarkson," said the boss, Bob Harris, after the meeting. "If we close this deal, you'll get a bonus." "Thanks, Bob," John replied, trying to hide his relief. He could already imagine how happy Linda would be when he told her about the possible raise. At home, after picking Emily up from school, John helped her with her math homework. She sat at the kitchen table, chewing on a pencil and frowning at the problem. "Dad, I don't understand why we have to divide fractions," she complained. "It's like dividing a pizza," John explained, drawing a circle on the paper. "If you have one pizza and you want to divide it into 4 pieces, how much does each person get?" Emily thought for a moment, then beamed. "Quarter, exactly." John patted her on the shoulder. "You're a smart girl." Linda returned home around 7 with bags from the store. "I bought a new dress for dinner with the neighbors," she said, holding up a bright red dress. "What do you think?" "Beautiful," John nodded. "But are you sure we need another dress? The wardrobe is already bursting." Linda frowned. "John, I have to look good. People notice these things. You don't want me to look like we're broke, do you?" "We're not broke, Linda," he said, trying to keep his voice even. "It's just, maybe it's worth saving sometimes." "Saving?" Linda laughed, but there was a sharp edge to her voice. "You make a lot of money. Is that too much to ask?" John said nothing. He didn't want to fight, especially in front of Emily. But deep down, he felt that Linda didn't understand how much effort he was putting into making their life the way she wanted it to be. That evening, after putting Emily to bed, John walked into the living room. Linda was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. "Look at the photos I posted from our last trip," she said, showing the screen. "Already 100 likes. People are writing that we are the perfect couple." John looked at the photo, the 3 of them on the beach, smiling, tanned and happy. He remembered how on that trip Linda had been angry that he had taken too long to set up the tent. But in the photo, everything looked perfect. "It turned out beautifully," he said, sitting down next to her. "But Linda, maybe sometimes you shouldn't lay everything out. Just live for yourself." She looked at him as if he had said something ridiculous. "John, this is part of our life. People need to see that we are doing well. This is important." He nodded, but his irritation was growing inside. He wanted Linda to value him as much as the image they projected. He worked himself to death so she could focus on the house, the yoga, the book club. But her demands, a new couch, a dress, desserts from an expensive bakery, were beginning to seem endless. "I just want you to be happy," he said finally. "I'm happy," Linda replied, but her voice sounded more like an excuse. "It's just, you know how important it is for everything to look right." John leaned back on the couch, looking at the ceiling. He loved his family, but sometimes he felt like a money-making machine, not a husband and father. He pushed those thoughts away. Tomorrow would be a new day, and he would do everything to make sure their life remained the perfect one Linda dreamed of. Rain lashed the windshield, turning Highway 94 into a blur. John Clarkson was driving his SUV home after a successful presentation at work. The contract was almost in the bag, and the boss was hinting at a bonus. John turned on the radio. Some 80s tunes helped him relax. He thought about how happy Linda would be when she found out about the possible promotion, and how Emily would brag to her friends that her dad was an important man. The clock on the dashboard showed 7:32 p.m. The windshield wipers were on full blast, but visibility was near zero. John slowed down, staying in the right lane. Suddenly, the headlights of an oncoming car blinded him, and he heard tires squeal. There was a deafening thud. His car spun, his seatbelt cutting painfully into his shoulder. The world spun, the glass cracked, and then everything went silent. John blinked, trying to come to his senses. His head was pounding and his back was numb, gripped by a sharp pain. He tried to move, but his body responded with a flash of discomfort. Through the broken side window, he saw another car a few meters away, its hood crumpled, its windshield shattered. Rain was pouring down on the asphalt, and the headlights of his SUV illuminated the figure of the driver, lying motionless on the steering wheel. Beside him, in the passenger seat, a woman was moving, trying to get out. "Hey, you okay?" John called, but his voice was shaking. He wanted to open the door and go over, but his legs were weak and his back protested with every movement. He realized he couldn't get out without making the injury worse. Instead, he reached for his phone, which was lying on the passenger seat. His hands were shaking, but he dialed 911. "Accident on Route 94, mile marker 10, he told the dispatcher, trying to speak clearly. "Two vehicles. The driver in the other car doesn't seem to be moving. Hurry." "Are you hurt, sir?" asked the voice on the other end. "I don't know. My back hurts," John admitted. "But I'm conscious. There's a woman in the other car. She needs help." The dispatcher was asking questions, and John was looking out the window at the woman in the other car. She had gotten out from under her belt and was holding her hand to her head, clearly in shock. "My husband, he..." Her weak voice came through the noise of the rain. He felt ill. He grabbed his chest. "Hold on, the ambulance is coming," John shouted, trying to cheer her up, although he himself felt the pain in his back getting sharper. He gripped the steering wheel to keep from passing out. The sirens began to wail 10 minutes later. Police and paramedics emerged from the rain, their lights flashing in the darkness. John watched as they ran to the other car, checked the driver, and then helped the woman out. One of the paramedics, a guy in a bright jacket, walked up to John's SUV. "Sir, are you all right?" he asked, shining his flashlight through the window. "Don't move. We'll check you out now." "I'm fine," John muttered, but trying to turn around caused a flash of pain. "It's just my back. Something's wrong." "Don't move," the paramedic said. "We'll get you out." They carefully opened the door and laid John on a stretcher, bracing his neck and back. In the ambulance, he found himself next to a woman from another car. She was pale, with disheveled dark hair, and stared into space. "My name is Kate," she said quietly when their eyes met. "My husband, Brian, he got sick while driving. I didn't have time to do anything." "John," he replied, trying to breathe evenly, "I'm sorry. Hang in there." Kate nodded, her eyes filled with tears. The paramedic confirmed that Brian had not survived a heart attack. John felt a lump in his throat, but the pain in his back distracted him from his thoughts. The emergency room at Memorial Hospital was noisy, with monitors humming and doctors talking. John was placed on a gurney, and a nurse checked his blood pressure and pulse. Kate was wheeled into the next room. John pulled out his phone and dialed Linda, though every movement was painful. "John, where are you?" Linda's voice was sharp. "Emily's already asking why you're not here." "I was in an accident," he said, trying not to sound panicked. "On 94, I'm in the hospital, but I'm alive. Come to Memorial Hospital." "An accident?" Linda gasped. "Oh God, John, how? Are you okay?" "My back hurts, but I'm fine," he replied. "The other driver, he got sick. It wasn't my fault." "Okay, I'll take Emily and go," Linda said, but her tone was irritated. "Try not to stay there too long." She hung up. John stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the hospital. He thought about Kate, about her husband, about how life could end in an instant. The pain in his back was not abating, and he began to suspect that this was more serious than it seemed. Linda arrived half an hour later, rushing into the room with Emily by the hand. The girl rushed to her father, her eyes shining with tears. "Daddy, you won't die?" she asked, clutching his hand. "No, honey," John forced himself to smile, even though the movement hurt. "Just a little accident. Dad's tough." Linda stood by the door, adjusting her bag on her shoulder. "Tell me what happened," she said, her voice calm but with a hint of impatience. "You always drive carefully." John briefly described the accident. Rain, an oncoming car, a driver who became ill. "It's not my fault, Linda," he added, noticing her look. "I couldn't do anything." "I see," she replied, nodding, but her eyes slid to the phone she was holding. "Have they examined you yet? Will they be releasing you soon?" "They're doing an X-ray of your back," John said. "They'll tell you soon." Emily snuggled up to him, and John stroked her head, trying not to move. Linda tapped her fingers on her bag. "Emily, let's go. We have to go," she said, looking at her watch. "You have school tomorrow." "I want to stay," Emily protested. "Not now, honey," John said, squeezing her hand. "Go with Mom. I'll be there soon." The doctor came in with a tablet, his face serious. "Mr. Clarkson, the X-ray showed a problem with the spine," he said. "Possible damage to the vertebrae. We need an MRI. It's best to stay overnight." John nodded, feeling his insides tighten. Linda raised her eyebrows, but her face remained almost impassive. "For the night?" she asked, adjusting the strap of her bag. "Okay then. Just keep me posted, John. I need to know how to plan for tomorrow." "I'll let you know," he replied, holding back his irritation. Her tone was businesslike, as if they were talking about a broken car and not his health. Linda took Emily's hand and walked out, casting a quick, devoid of warmth, glance at John. He was left alone, listening to the hum of the hospital. Somewhere nearby, Kate was probably getting her bad news. John closed his eyes, trying not to think about what would happen next. John lay in his hospital room, staring at the white, cracked ceiling. The hum of the air conditioner and the distant voices of the nurses created a monotonous background, but he couldn't relax. The pain in his back ebbed and flowed, especially when he tried to turn over. They'd done the MRI that morning, and now he was waiting for the results. His phone was on the nightstand, but he didn't want to call Linda until he knew what the doctor said. She'd been on edge the night before, and her businesslike tone only made him more worried. "Emily called me last night before bed, her voice shaking. 'Dad, are you sure you're coming home?' she asked, while Linda was talking in the background. "Sure, honey," John replied, trying to sound confident. "The doctors just want to make sure I'm as good as new." "I love you," she said quietly, and John felt a lump in his throat. "And I love you too, Em. Sleep well." Now he waited, clutching the edge of the sheet. The door to the room opened and Dr. Ramirez, the same tired-eyed doctor who had examined him yesterday, walked in. He had a clipboard in his hands, and a nurse followed him with a folder. "Mr. Clarkson, how are you feeling?" Ramirez asked, adjusting his glasses. "My back hurts," John answered honestly. "But it's bearable." "What did the MRI show?" The doctor sat down on a chair next to the bed and tapped on the tablet screen. "You have a compression fracture of two vertebrae, T12 and L1, he said, his voice calm but serious. "It doesn't require immediate surgery, which is good news, but the damage is severe. You'll need to limit your activity, wear a brace, and possibly undergo physical therapy." John nodded, although the doctor's words sounded like a death sentence. "Limit how much is that?" he asked. "I'm an engineer working on a construction site. I need to move, check projects on site." Ramirez frowned, scrolling through something on his tablet. "I'm afraid that construction work will be impossible in the near future. Heavy lifting, prolonged standing, even frequent travel, all of this is prohibited until the spine recovers. This could take months, and in the worst case." He paused. "You will not be able to return to your previous workload." John felt the floor shift beneath his feet. His job at Harris Construction wasn't just a source of income, it was part of who he was. He loved drawing plans, walking around construction sites, seeing his calculations turn into buildings. "So I won't be able to work?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Not exactly," Ramirez said. "You'll be able to work, but not in the field. Maybe something remote or less physically active. We'll refer you to a rehabilitation specialist, and they'll put you on a plan. But Mr. Clarkson, you need to be careful. If you don't let your spine heal, it could be worse. John clenched his fists. What if I try anyway? Return to work earlier. The doctor shook his head. It's a risk of paralysis. Don't joke about it. The nurse wrote something down in the folder and left, and Ramirez added, "We'll discharge you tomorrow if there are no complications. We'll observe you today. I'll send a physiotherapist to discuss the corset and first steps." "Thank you, doctor," John muttered, but the words rang hollow. When Ramirez left, he was alone with his thoughts. Without his construction job, he didn't know how he would support his family. Linda had grown accustomed to their lifestyle, the house, Emily's school, her yoga and book clubs. How would she react if he couldn't make the money he once did? He picked up the phone and dialed Linda. She answered on the third ring. "John, what's going on?" Her voice was sharp, as if she was busy with something important. "They did an MRI," he said, trying to speak calmly. "I have a fractured vertebra. It's nothing serious, but I won't be able to work on a construction site for now. Maybe for months." There was silence on the other end. Then Linda exhaled. "Months? John, are you serious? What about your work? Bonus? You said the contract was almost signed." "I know," he squeezed the phone tighter. "I'll talk to Bob. Maybe they can find me something in the office. But for now, I need to recover." "Recover," she repeated, and there was annoyance in her voice. "What are we supposed to do? Emily's at school. We have bills, plans. I can't do it all on my own." "You're not dragging it out, Linda," John said, feeling his irritation growing. "I'll figure it out. Just give me a day, okay?" "Okay," she replied, but her tone was cold. "Emily wants to talk to you." "Dad," his daughter's voice burst into the receiver, and John couldn't help but smile. "Are you going home soon?" "Tomorrow, honey," he said. "The doctors just want to make sure I'm okay." "I drew you a postcard," Emily said proudly. "It's you and me and Mom on the beach." "I can't wait to see," John replied, trying to hide the lump in his throat. "You're doing great, Em." Linda picked up the phone. "We'll stop by tomorrow," she said. "Keep me posted, John. We need to know what to plan." She hung up, and John sank back into his pillow. Her words, "We need to know what to plan," sounded like an implication that his injury had thrown her schedule into disarray. He knew Linda liked to be in control, but her reaction seemed too distant. She hadn't even asked how he was feeling. The day dragged on. The physical therapist, a young woman named Sarah, arrived after lunch. She showed John how to put on the brace and explained that he should avoid sudden movements for the next few weeks. "It's not forever," she said, noticing his grim expression, "but you need to give your body time. We'll start light exercises in a couple of weeks." "What if I can't go back to my job?" John asked. "I'm an engineer. I need to be on my feet." Sarah looked at him with sympathy. "Many find ways to adapt. Perhaps you will be able to work on the computer. The main thing is not to rush." John nodded, but her words did not reassure him. He thought about Bob, about his coworkers, about how to explain that he could no longer climb construction sites. Harris Construction valued him for his ability to be there to check every bolt. Without it, he felt useless. In the evening, he called his boss. Bob answered on the first ring. "John, how are you?" Bob's voice was loud as always. "I heard about the accident. How the hell did you manage it?" "It wasn't my fault," John said. "The other guy, heart attack. I'm in the hospital, Bob. Back problems. The doctors say I can't go to the site yet." "Really?" Bob whistled. "This sucks. Look, get better, and then we'll figure it out. Maybe we can find you something in the office, blueprints or something." "Thank you," John replied, but he sensed that Bob was unsure. When he went to bed, the pain in his back kept him awake. But even worse was the thought of how Linda would take the news. John returned home the day after the accident, moving slowly and carefully. The brace his physical therapist had given him was tight around his ribs, but provided some relief from the pain in his back. Linda met him at the door, holding her phone as if she had just finished texting. Emily rushed toward her father, nearly knocking him over. "Daddy, you're home," she cried, hugging him around the waist. John winced, but forced himself to smile. "Be careful, honey," he said, stroking her head. "Daddy's like glass now, you have to be careful." Linda looked at him, her face tense. "So, how are you?" she asked, putting the phone in her pocket. "What did the doctors say?" "Broken vertebrae," John said, leaning against the wall to take off his boots. "Can't work on a construction site until it heals. Could be months. They want me to wear a brace and go to physical therapy." Linda nodded, but her gaze slid to the side, as if she was already thinking about something else. "Months," she repeated quietly. "What about the money? Have you talked to Bob?" "Yeah." John walked into the living room and sat down carefully on the couch. "He said he'd try to find me something in the office, but nothing concrete." Emily climbed onto the couch next to him, holding the card she had drawn. "Look, Dad, this is for you." She showed a piece of paper with a bright picture, 3 figures on a beach in the sun. "This is you, me, and Mom." "Cool, Em," John smiled, even though his insides were clenching. He could feel Linda watching him, and her silence spoke louder than words. "Let's put it in the fridge, okay?" Emily ran into the kitchen, and Linda sat on the edge of the chair, crossing her arms. "John, we need to have a serious talk," she said, lowering her voice. "If you can't work like you used to, it changes everything. We have a mortgage, Emily's school, my classes. We can't just sit here and wait." "I know," he replied, trying to keep his voice even. "I'm already thinking about how to solve this. Maybe remote work, consulting. I'm not going to sit on my hands." "Remote work?" Linda raised an eyebrow. "You said to yourself that your company values you for working on site. What if they find someone else?" John clenched his jaw. Her words had hurt him, but he didn't want to argue in front of Emily. "I'll figure it out, Linda. Give me time." She sighed and stood up, adjusting her hair. "Okay, I need to know that we'll have this under control. Emily, go do your homework." The next few days were tough. John was trying to get used to the brace and the restrictions. He couldn't lift anything heavier than a mug of coffee, and even a walk to the mailbox left him exhausted. Linda became even more distant. She spent more time on her phone, posting about life's challenges and the strength of family, but at home her mood was different. She often stayed late at her yoga class or out with friends, leaving John with Emily. One evening, a couple of weeks after the accident, John was sitting in the kitchen helping Emily with her English homework. She was reading a story out loud, stumbling over the long words. "Dad, what does persevere mean?" she asked, frowning. "It means keep going even when it's hard," John explained, pointing to the page. "Like when you're learning to ride a bike and you fall, but you try again." Emily nodded, but her eyes were serious. "And it's hard for you now, right?" John froze. "A little, honey, but I can handle it. We can all handle it." Linda walked into the kitchen with her gym bag. She looked tired, but her makeup was flawless. "Emily, it's time for bed," she said, putting her bag on a chair. "John, are you okay?" "Yes," he answered, but he didn't like her tone. "You're late today." "I had a meeting with the girls." Linda waved it off. "We needed to discuss the book club and something else." John noticed how she avoided his gaze. "Something else?" he asked again. She shrugged, pouring herself some water. "Just business, John. It's not all about you." He said nothing, but there was something in her words that made him wary. Emily went to bed, and John remained in the kitchen, looking at Linda. "Linda, what's going on?" he asked bluntly. "You've been out all day, and at home, it's like you're not even there." She put the glass on the table. Her movements were sharp. "What's going on? John, are you serious? You're sitting at home, not working, and I have to keep everything under control. School, home, bills. I'm tired. I didn't choose this injury," he said, trying not to break down. "I'm doing what I can." "And that might not be enough," she snapped. Her voice was cold, but there was panic in it. We need stability, John. Emily needs stability. He wanted to answer, but she had already left the kitchen, leaving him alone. That night, John barely slept, tossing and turning in his corset and turning her words over in his head. He felt like their family, which he had tried so hard to keep together, was beginning to come apart at the seams. 2 weeks later, Linda did something John hadn't expected. He was returning from the hospital after another consultation with his physiotherapist when he noticed that the house was suspiciously quiet. Emily was supposed to be home after school, but her backpack wasn't in the hallway. There was a note on the kitchen table. John, I need some time to think about this. I picked up Emily. We'll be at my sister's. Don't call until I'm ready to talk. Linda. John read the note 3 times, not believing his eyes. He grabbed the phone and dialed her number, but she didn't answer. After the 5th ring, the answering machine came on. He tried again, then wrote a message. Linda, what the hell? Where's Emily? There was no answer. He called Linda's sister, Carol, but she was evasive. I've got her, John, Carol said. She and Emily are fine. Give her a couple of days, okay? A couple of days? John raised his voice. She took my daughter and didn't even talk to me. What's going on? I don't know all the details, Carol replied. She just said she needed space. Please don't push her. John threw the phone on the couch and sank into a chair, ignoring the pain in his back. He felt betrayed. Linda hadn't just left, she'd taken Emily, as if he were a threat. He remembered her words about stability and understood what she meant. She didn't believe he could provide for their old life. Later, he learned from a neighbor that Linda hadn't gone to her sister. Someone had seen her car outside the home of Mark Taylor, a lawyer she was supposedly friends with through her book club. John knew Mark, a cocky guy with an expensive car and a reputation for being a womanizer. The idea that Linda might have gone to him was like a punch in the gut. He sat in the empty house, clutching the note, knowing that his family was falling apart and there was nothing he could do. John sat in the living room, clutching Linda's note. The silence of the house was oppressive, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. Emily was gone, her laughter, her questions about homework, nothing. He dialed Linda's number again, but the phone immediately went to voicemail. Message after message, call after call, but she didn't answer. John threw the phone on the couch and ran a hand over his face, trying not to panic. The corset was digging into his ribs, and the pain in his back was a reminder that he couldn't even run after her. In the morning, he called Linda's sister Carol, hoping to get some answers. Carol, tell me the truth, he said, trying to keep his voice even. Is Linda there? Where's Emily? John, I told you yesterday, Carol replied, but her voice was strained. I have them. Linda, she needs time. Don't push her. Time? John raised his voice. She took my daughter and left a note like I was a stranger. I want to talk to Emily. Carol sighed. Emily's asleep. I'll tell her you called. Give Linda a couple of days, okay? John wanted to protest, but Carol quickly said goodbye and hung up. He felt anger mingle with despair. A neighbor, Marge, had hinted yesterday that she had seen Linda's car at the house of Mark Taylor, a lawyer from their neighborhood. John knew him tall, with a perfect haircut and an expensive suit, always ready to charm everyone at parties. The thought that Linda might have gone to him burned inside. By midday, a courier arrived with an envelope. John, wincing in pain, opened the door and signed. Inside was a document, a divorce notice. Linda had filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences as the reason. In a footnote, she wrote that John was unable to provide for the family in its present state. He read the line 3 times, feeling the blood pounding in his temples. She hadn't just left, she had accused him of being a burden. Are you serious? He muttered, throwing the papers on the table. He dialed Linda's number again, but as expected, she didn't answer. Then he called his friend Tony, a lawyer with whom he sometimes played poker. Tony, I need help, John said when he answered. Linda filed for divorce, took Emily, and I don't even know where they are. Damn, dude, that's tough. Tony's voice was full of sympathy. Send me the papers. I'll take a look. Do you know where she is? Maybe with her sister? She says Carol has it, but I don't believe it, John admitted. The neighbors saw her car at Mark Taylor's, a lawyer from our area. Tony whistled. He's a real character. Okay, let's meet tomorrow. Bring everything you have, documents, correspondence, whatever. And don't do anything stupid, John. Don't call her anymore. It could hurt in court. In court? John felt his stomach clench. Do you think she'll try to take Emily? If she filed for divorce, then yes, Tony said. But we won't let her. You're a good father, and the court will take that into account. The main thing is to pull yourself together. After the call, John walked around the house, trying to distract himself. He went into Emily's room, where her pencils and the drawing she had shown him yesterday lay on the table. 3 figures on the beach, him, Emily, and Linda. He clenched his fists, feeling Linda's betrayal tearing him apart from the inside. She hadn't just left, she had taken his daughter, accused him of weakness, and seemed to be already building a new life with Mark. The next day, John met Tony at a small cafe near the Harris construction office. The corset made it difficult to sit comfortably, but John tolerated it. Tony, in his usual checked shirt, leafed through the papers John had brought. She's playing dirty, Tony said, sipping his coffee. Unable to provide for a family? That's a low blow. But you have aces. You're still on sick leave, you're injured, and she left with the child without warning. The courts don't like that. I just want Emily with me, John said, looking into his cup. I can't lose her, Tony. You won't, Tony said firmly. We'll prove you're a stable parent. But we need to gather everything that proves her, shall we say, unreliability. You said she's with Mark Taylor? John nodded. Marge, a neighbor, saw her car at his house. And Linda has been acting strange lately, staying out late, always on the phone. That's something, Tony made a note in his notebook. If she's with him, it could be adultery. We can't prove it, but it will give us leverage. In the meantime, keep your head cool. Don't write to her, don't call her. Let her think you're in a daze. John returned home feeling a little more confident. Tony was right, he wouldn't give up. He began digging into the family finances, checking the statements for their joint bank account. There were some odd expenses, expensive restaurants, a clothing boutique, even a jewelry store. John knew Linda was a spender, but these were more than she usually spent on herself. He took screenshots, sent them to Tony, and began collecting other evidence. Her social media posts about a new beginning, and texts where she was evasive when he asked her questions. A few days later, he finally got through to Emily. Linda allowed her to answer, but the conversation was short. Dad, where are you? Emily's voice was shaking. Mom says we're at Aunt Carol's, but I miss home. I miss you too, honey, John said, trying not to show the pain. I'll see you soon, I promise. Are you okay? Yes, she answered, but her voice was unsure. Mom is always with some guy. I don't like him. John felt his heart sink. What uncle, Em? I don't know. Mark, I think, she said. He laughs all the time, but in a strange way. Linda interrupted the conversation, taking the phone. John, stop asking her questions, she said sharply. We'll come back when I'm ready. Don't make it difficult. Linda, you took my daughter, he said, barely containing his anger. I have a right to know where she is. I'm doing what's best for her, she snapped and hung up. John sat in the empty living room, clutching his phone. He realized that Linda hadn't just left, she was already building a new life, and Emily was part of her plan. But he wasn't about to give up. He called Tony and said, Do whatever you have to. I want Emily to be with me. Linda is lying, and I will prove it. Tony replied, Okay, John, we'll start preparing the documents. Hang in there, brother. John sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by bank statement printouts and his laptop. The corset still pressed against his chest, but he had learned to ignore the discomfort. It had been a week since Linda had filed for divorce, and her note, I need time, still sat on the table, a reminder of her betrayal. He couldn't get Emily on the phone, and every missed call to Linda made him more determined. He wasn't going to let her ruin his life and take his daughter away. Tony, his lawyer friend, sat across from him, sipping coffee from a Harris construction mug and leafing through the statements John had collected over the past few days. "It's gold, John," Tony said, circling the line on the statement with his pen. "Look, $3,000 at a jewelry store, $2,000 at Le Petit. That doesn't look like her usual yoga or grocery spending. Are you sure you didn't buy her the ring?" John shook his head. "I haven't given her a piece of jewelry since the engagement ring, and we never went to Le Petit too expensive. It's Mark, I'm sure." Tony nodded, making another note. "If we prove that she spent the family money on her lover, it will strengthen your position. The courts do not like it when one of the spouses steals from a joint account before a divorce." "What about Emily?" John asked, his voice tense. "I can't see her, Tony. Linda won't let me talk to her." "That's also good for us," Tony said, leaning back in his chair. "She's restricting your access to the child without a court order. That's a violation, but we need to be smarter. I suggest opening a separate account and transferring some of your savings into it. Not all of it, so it doesn't look like you're hiding money, but enough to protect yourself." John frowned. "Is this legal? I don't want her to turn this against me." "Legal, if we do it right," Tony replied. "You have a joint account, right? You're entitled to half. We'll transfer some to your personal account, document it as being for Emily's expenses and your recovery. If she tries to accuse you of stealing, we'll have evidence that you were acting in the family's best interests." John nodded. He didn't like digging around in finances like he was a spy, but he knew Linda had already made her move. "Okay, how much should I translate?" "Half of what's in the account," Tony said. "You've got about 50 grand there, right? Transfer 25. That'll show you're not being greedy, but you're not leaving yourself broke either." John opened his laptop and logged into his bank account. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He had worked his whole life to keep that account growing, so Linda could buy her dresses and Emily could go to a good school. Now he was dividing it up to protect himself from his wife. "Do it, John," Tony said, seeing his hesitation. "She's already spending on Mark Taylor. If you don't protect yourself, she'll leave you empty-handed." John took a deep breath and transferred $25,000 to his personal account, which he had opened a few years ago for small savings. He saved the transfer confirmation and sent it to Tony. "Great," Tony said, checking his email. "Now we'll prepare a response to her divorce petition. I'll point out that you want joint custody of Emily and that her leaving with the baby was unreasonable. We'll also request a financial audit of her spending." John nodded, but his thoughts were on Emily. He hadn't seen her since Linda had left, and her words, "Mom's always with some guy," were on his mind. He pulled out his phone and texted Linda, "I want to talk to Emily. This isn't a request." An hour later, she replied, "Not now, John. She needs time to adjust." "Get used to it," he muttered, throwing the phone on the table. "To what? To your new boyfriend?" Tony looked up from his papers. "She answered like that. Keep it. Anything she writes can be used in court." John saved the screenshot and sent it to Tony. He felt like he was in a bad movie where his life was being torn apart. But for Emily, he was willing to play by those rules. That evening, he tried to distract himself by turning on the TV, but the local news only irritated him. He turned it off and opened his laptop to check Linda's social media. Her latest post was about a new phase in life, with a photo of a sunset and the hashtag #HashFamilyPower. John gritted his teeth. She was building an image of a strong woman while he sat in an empty house, unsure when he would see his daughter again. The next day, Tony called with the news. "I spoke to a colleague who knows Mark Taylor," he said. "It seems he's more than just a lawyer with money. He has a reputation for having affairs, but losing interest quickly. If Linda is with him, she could soon be left high and dry." "I don't care about her personal life," John said. "I want Emily back." "I understand," Tony said. "I filed a motion to allow you to see Emily. The judge will review it in a week. In the meantime, Keep collecting everything you can. Statements, messages, even gossip from neighbors. John nodded, although Tony couldn't see him. There's one more thing, Tony added. Mark Taylor works for a divorce firm. If he's helping Linda, it might complicate things, but we'll manage. After the call, John walked around the house, collecting odds and ends that might come in handy. He found a receipt from a boutique where Linda had bought a $700 dress and a check from a restaurant she had never been to with him. He scanned them all and sent them to Tony. He also called Marge, the neighbor who had seen Linda's car outside Mark's house. "Marge, are you sure it was her car?" he asked, trying to speak calmly. "Oh, John, that's right," Marge replied, her voice full of sympathy. "I saw her leaving Mark Taylor's house the day before yesterday. They were laughing like old friends. I'm so sorry, darling." "Thanks, Marge," John said. "If you see anything else, let me know, okay?" "Of course, dear," she replied. "You don't deserve that." John hung up and sat down on the couch. He felt broken, but anger gave him strength. Linda hadn't just left. She had tried to rewrite their lives as if he were a nobody. He opened his laptop and began making a list of all their assets together. The house, the car, the savings. He didn't know how far Linda would go, but he was prepared to defend what was his and Emily's. Before going to bed, he looked at Emily's drawing on the refrigerator. 3 figures on a beach, their family that no longer existed. He promised himself that he would do anything to get his daughter back, even if he had to fight Linda and her new lawyer lover. John sat in the physical therapist's office, trying to focus on Sarah's instructions as she showed him exercises to strengthen his back, but his mind was elsewhere. It had been 10 days since Linda had left with Emily, and he still hadn't seen his daughter. Tony's petition for visits with Emily had been filed, but the judge hadn't set a hearing date yet. John felt the time dragging on, the emptiness in the house becoming unbearable. The brace still squeezed his ribs, but the pain in his back eased a little as long as he didn't make any sudden movements. "John, can you hear me?" Sarah, the physical therapist, looked at him with a slight reproach. "You need to do these exercises twice a day. Don't overexert yourself, but don't be lazy either." "Yeah, I get it," he replied, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "It's just, my head's full." Sarah nodded, her gaze softening. "I understand. But your body won't wait for life to get better. Do the exercises, and in a couple of months, you'll feel the difference." John forced a smile. "Thank you, Sarah. I'll try." After the session, he walked out of the office, leaning on the cane he had been given at the hospital. In the lobby of the clinic, he noticed a familiar figure, a woman with dark hair, sitting in a chair with a magazine. She looked up, and their eyes met. It was Kate, the passenger from the car that had crashed. Her face was pale, but she looked better than she had that night on the highway. "John," she said, standing up, "is that you?" "Kate," he nodded, a little awkwardly. "It's good to see you. Well, I mean, that you're okay." She smiled weakly. "Fine is an exaggeration, but I'm holding up. How are you? You look." She hesitated, looking at his cane, "Not so well." John chuckled, though the laughter sent a pain through his back. "Fractured vertebrae, corset, physical therapy, all that. And you?" "Bruised ribs and a concussion," Kate replied, touching her temple. "But it's nothing. It's just hard without Brian." John remembered that night, her husband lying motionless behind the wheel, her trembling voice. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. "The doctors said it was a heart attack." Kate nodded, her eyes sparkling. "Yes, they said he didn't even realize what was happening. It all happened so fast. I keep wondering if there was anything I could have done." "You couldn't," John said firmly. "No one could. It's not your fault." She looked at him as if his words had given her a moment of relief. "Thank you. You know, I can still hear those tires screeching. I woke up at night and—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "Sorry, I don't want to burden you." "It's okay," John said. "I see that night sometimes too. It's like I'm sitting in the car again." They were silent for a moment, and awkwardness hung in the air. Kate was the first to break the silence. "Do you want some coffee? There's a machine nearby, not much, but better than nothing." John nodded, and they walked slowly to the coffee machine in the corner of the hall. He leaned on his cane, she held on to her bag like a life preserver. The machine dispensed 2 plastic cups of hot but mediocre coffee. "So you're here for physical therapy?" Kate asked, taking a sip. "Yeah," John replied. "I'm trying to get my back in shape. What about you?" "Recovering from a concussion," she said. "And also, just trying to keep myself together. Brian was everything to me. We were married for 10 years, planning a baby. Now I'm alone in our house, and everything reminds me of him." John listened, feeling her words echo in his own pain. "I understand," he said. "My life is falling apart, too. My wife left and took our daughter. She says I need time, but I know she's with someone else." Kate looked at him in surprise. "She left after the accident? That's cruel." "Yes," John shrugged, trying to hide his bitterness. "She filed for divorce. She thinks I can no longer provide for her usual life." "That's not fair," Kate said, her voice firmer. "You got hurt and she just ran away. What about your daughter?" "Emily," John smiled as he said her name. "She's 8. I haven't seen her in over a week. Linda won't let me talk to her. I hired a lawyer to fight for her." Kate shook her head. "It's terrible. She has no right to take your child away from you. You look like a man who would do anything for his daughter." "I'm trying," John said, looking into his glass. "But sometimes it feels like everything is against me. My job is in question, my back hurts, and Linda. She's already building a new life." Kate touched his arm, her gesture light but sincere. "You can do it, John. I don't know you well, but I can see that you're not the type to give up. And Emily is lucky to have a father like you." He looked at her, feeling warmth from her words. For the first time in a week, he didn't feel so alone. "Thanks, Kate. And you, how are you holding up?" She sighed, looking away. "It varies. During the day I go to work, I'm a music teacher at school. It's distracting, and at night, I just sit and look at his things. I can't figure them out." "Don't rush," John said. "Give yourself time. You've lost your husband, that's no small thing." They finished their coffee and Kate looked at her watch. "I have to go to my session, but maybe I'll see you again. You know where to find me," she smiled, and there was a spark in her eyes that John hadn't seen that night on the highway. "Of course," he replied. "Take care, Kate." She left, and John stood by the machine, feeling strangely relieved. The conversation with Kate had been short, but for the first time in a long time he was talking to someone who didn't judge him or demand decisions from him. He thought of Brian, her husband, and how unfairly life had treated her. But her strength, despite the pain, inspired. Back home, John checked his email. Tony had sent a draft of his response to Linda's lawsuit. In it, he emphasized that John was a caring father and that Linda's departure from Emily was unjustified. John included screenshots of her recent spending, including a jewelry bill. He also wrote a message to Emily, even though he knew Linda would probably not show it. "Honey, Daddy loves you. See you soon." Before he went to bed, he looked at Emily's drawing on the refrigerator. He knew the fight for his daughter would be long, but seeing Kate reminded him that he was not alone in his pain, and that gave him the strength to continue. John stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting his shirt. Today was the day of Emily's first custody hearing, and his nerves were taut as strings. The corset under his shirt still pressed against his ribs, but he'd learned to move so the pain wouldn't distract him. It had been 2 weeks since Linda had left, and in that time he'd only seen Emily once a brief video call where she looked confused, with Linda standing behind her, monitoring her every word. "Are you ready?" Tony asked, walking into the living room with his briefcase. He was wearing his best suit, the one he usually wore to court. "Judge Kelly is tough, but fair. If we do this right, we have a chance." John nodded, although inside he was seething. "I just want Emily to be with me. Linda has no right to keep her from me. We'll prove it, Tony said, clapping him on the shoulder, but immediately apologized when he noticed John winces. Sorry, I forgot about my back. Come on, we won't be late. The courtroom was chilly, despite the warm July day. John sat next to Tony, looking at Linda, who sat opposite him with Mark Taylor. He looked like he was on the cover of a magazine, an expensive suit, clean-shaven, a confident smile. Linda, in a formal gray dress, avoided John's gaze. Emily was not in court. She had been left with Linda's sister, Carol. Judge Kelly, a woman in her 50s with short gray hair, walked into the courtroom and took her seat. She looked at the papers in front of her and began. The case is Clarkson v. Clarkson. Motion for temporary custody and visitation. Mr. Brown, you have the floor. Tony stood up and straightened his tie. Your Honor, my client, John Clarkson, requests joint custody of his daughter, Emily Clarkson, age 8. Mrs. Clarkson left the family home 2 weeks ago, taking the child without the father's consent, and has restricted his access to his daughter. Mr. Clarkson is a loving father who has always provided for the family, despite his recent injury in an accident. Mark Taylor stood up, his voice smooth, as if he had rehearsed the speech. Your Honor, my client, Linda Clarkson, left her home to provide stability for her daughter. Mr. Clarkson has suffered a serious injury that limits his ability to work and care for his child. Mrs. Clarkson is acting in Emily's best interests. John clenched his fists under the table. He wanted to shout that Linda had left not for Emily, but for Mark, but Tony had anticipated this and had told him to be quiet. Mr. Brown, do you have evidence of restricted access? Judge Kelly asked, looking over her glasses. Tony nodded and handed over the printouts. Your Honor, here is the correspondence where Mrs. Clarkson refuses my client to communicate with her daughter. We also have testimony from neighbors confirming that Mrs. Clarkson does not live with her sister, as she claims, but with another man, Mark Taylor. The courtroom froze. Linda blushed and Mark cleared his throat, remaining impassive. Judge Kelly raised an eyebrow as she leafed through the papers. Mr. Taylor, is this true? She asked. Your Honor, my client is temporarily living on her own to consider her future, Mark replied. It has nothing to do with her role as a mother. It is relevant if she restricts the father's access to the child, the judge snapped. Mr. Clarkson, you may speak. John stood up, leaning on the edge of the table to take the strain off his back. Your Honor, I love my daughter. I've always been there for her, helping her with her homework, taking her to dances, going to every concert she's ever attended. My injury doesn't make me a bad father. Linda left without warning, took Emily, and won't let me see her. I just want to be a part of her life. His voice wavered, and he fell silent, afraid to say too much. The judge nodded, writing something down. Mrs. Clarkson, she said, looking at Linda. Linda stood up, her hands shaking slightly. I want Emily to be safe. John was injured. He can't work like he used to. I don't know how he'll be able to take care of her. I'm doing this for her. John looked at her, and her words cut like a knife. She spoke as if he were a burden, not a father. Tony leaned toward him and whispered, Calm down. She's drowning herself. Judge Kelly flipped through a few more pages. Given the evidence presented, I am awarding temporary 50/50ths joint custody. Mr. Clarkson will have visitation rights with his daughter 3 days a week, beginning tomorrow. Mrs. Clarkson, you must provide access. Next hearing in a month. Case closed. She banged the hammer and John felt the tension ease a little. Tony slapped his hand. It's a victory, John. Not a complete one, but a good start. Linda and Mark walked out of the room without looking at him. John saw her whisper something to Mark, and he nodded, putting his hand on her back. It was a blow, but John forced himself to focus on the good. He would see Emily. The next day, Linda brought Emily to the house. The girl jumped out of the car, ran to John, and hugged him, almost knocking him down. Daddy, she cried, her voice full of joy. I missed you so much. Me too, honey, John said, hugging her carefully so as not to hurt her back. Come on, I made your favorite pancakes. Linda stood by the car with her arms crossed. I'll pick her up Sunday evening, she said coldly. Don't forget her things. I won't forget, John answered, trying not to look at her. He took Emily's hand and led her into the house. While Emily immediately ran to her room, checking if everything was in place. Dad, did you touch my pencils? She shouted. None, John replied, smiling. He got out a frying pan and started making pancakes, listening to Emily chatter about school. For the first time in weeks, he felt at home. John woke to the sound of his alarm, which he had set for 6 in the morning. Emily was asleep in her room, her first weekend with him since the trial. He carefully got out of bed, trying not to strain his back, and put on his brace. The pain had lessened, but it still throbbed with every awkward movement. Today, he planned to take Emily to the park to run and get her mind off things, and then he had an appointment with a physical therapist. But most importantly, he was expecting a call from Bob, his boss, who promised to discuss job options. In the kitchen, John made coffee and began to prepare breakfast eggs and toast, Emily's favorite. She came down half an hour later, still sleepy, in her unicorn pajamas. Dad, are you up yet? She asked, rubbing her eyes. Yeah, honey, John smiled, putting a plate in front of her. Eat, otherwise you won't have the strength to run after butterflies in the park. Emily giggled. I'm not chasing butterflies, Dad. I want to go on the swing. A swing is a swing, he said, sitting down opposite. Just don't swing too hard, or I won't run after you. She looked at his corset and frowned. Does your back still hurt? A little, John answered, trying to speak lightly. But I'm getting stronger. The doctors say I'll be like Superman soon. Emily smiled, but her eyes were serious. Mom says you can't work now. Is that true? John froze, his fork hanging in midair. He hadn't expected Linda to discuss this with Emily. Mom's wrong, he said firmly. I'll find a way to work. It'll just be a little different. Don't worry, okay? Emily nodded, but John could tell she didn't quite believe it. He changed the subject, telling her about the new ride at the park, and soon she was chatting about school and her friend Sarah. But Linda's words stuck in her head. She was turning Emily against him, and that was worse than any blow. After breakfast, they drove to the park. John sat on a bench, watching Emily swing, her laughter ringing in the air. He pulled out his phone and checked his email. Bob had sent a text. Call at 11, I have an idea. John glanced at his watch. He had half an hour left. He hoped Bob would find him a place in the office, but deep down he was afraid he would just be pushed aside. In the physical therapist's office, Sarah checked his progress. Are you doing the exercises like I asked? She asked, watching him slowly lean forward. Twice a day, John replied. I feel better, but I still feel like a robot in this corset. Sarah smiled. That's a good sign. Your spine is healing, but you need a couple more months. I'll add some new exercises to strengthen your muscles. And John, don't overexert yourself. I know you want to get back to normal, but it's a process. I understand, he said, even though he wanted to shout that he didn't have time for the process. He needed to work to prove to Linda and to himself that he could still be a breadwinner. At 11, he called Bob while Emily was playing on the playground. John, how's your back? Bob's voice was cheerful, but John knew there was a business calculation behind it. It's healing, he replied. What's the idea? Look, I talked to the guys, Bob began. We can't keep you on the construction site, but we have a project that needs a consultant. Analysis of drawings, checking calculations, all remotely. Not the same salary as before, but it's better than nothing. What do you say? John felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. Working remotely meant less income, but it was a chance to stay in business. Sounds good, he said. When can I start? In a week, Bob replied. I'll send you the paperwork. And John, hang in there. We believe in you. Thank you, Bob, John said, though he knew Bob's faith had its limits. In the construction business, they valued people who could be on the ground, not behind a screen. At home, after the park, John helped Emily with her math homework. She sat at the kitchen table, chewing on a pencil and frowning over the problem. "Dad, I don't understand fractions," she complained. "It's simple," John said, drawing a circle on the paper. "Imagine it's a pizza. If you cut it into 4 pieces, how many would you get?" "A quarter," Emily beamed. "Good girl," he patted her head. These moments with her were like a breath of fresh air. He felt like a father, not just a man Linda had written off. That evening, after putting Emily to bed, John checked his email. Tony had sent an update. The judge scheduled another hearing in 3 weeks, and they needed to prepare more evidence against Linda. John opened his bank account and noticed a new transaction. Linda had withdrawn another $1,000, specifying travel. He took a screenshot and sent it to Tony, adding, "She spends as if it were her own money." Tony responded an hour later, "It strengthens our case. Keep monitoring. And keep Emily close. The judge will see that you are a stable parent." John looked at Emily's drawing on the fridge, 3 stick figures on a beach. He knew Linda would try to use his trauma against him, but his new job, even if remote, gave him hope. He began looking for online courses in engineering consulting to bolster his skills. This wasn't his usual world of construction sites, but he was willing to adapt. Before going to bed, he wrote Emily a note and put it in her backpack. "You are my star. Daddy is always with you." He knew Linda would pick her up the next day, but these 3 days with his daughter reminded him what he was fighting for. John sat on a park bench, watching Emily run around the playground, trying to catch the bubbles her friend Sarah was blowing. It was a sunny Saturday, the second weekend Emily had been with him under court order. His brace was still restricting his movement, but John was feeling a little better. The physical therapy had begun to work, and the pain in his back was less severe. He still couldn't lift anything heavy, but he could sit for longer periods of time without discomfort. His new job as a consultant had started 3 days earlier. Bob had sent in his first project, a blueprint review for a new office building. The work wasn't as exciting as the site reviews, but John was grateful to stay in business. He spent his evenings on his laptop, studying the blueprints and taking notes to prove to Bob that he could do it. "Dad, look, I caught a huge bubble," Emily shouted, waving her arms. Her smile was like a ray of sunshine, and John couldn't help but smile back. "Well done, sunshine," he shouted. "Catch another one for me." He pulled out his phone to take a photo, but noticed a text from Tony. "Linda has requested a financial audit. Be prepared, they may dig under you. Keep an eye on the accounts." John frowned. Linda was still playing dirty, but he was prepared. He saved all the receipts and screenshots of her spending, which Tony called gold for the court. Someone sat down on the bench next to him, and John turned around. It was Kate, in jeans and a light blue sweater. She was holding a paper cup of coffee and smiled when she saw him. "John, I didn't expect to see you here," she said, her voice warm but tired. "Is this your daughter?" "Yeah, Emily," John replied, nodding toward the landing. "She's here for the weekend. What are you doing here?" "I'm walking," Kate said, sipping her coffee. "My house is a couple of blocks from here. Sometimes I come here too, not sit in silence." John nodded, understanding what she was talking about. He remembered their conversation at the clinic 2 weeks ago, her pain at losing her husband. "How are you holding up?" he asked, looking at her. Kate shrugged, her fingers nervously fiddling with the rim of her cup. "It depends. Work helps. I teach music at a school, and the kids keep me from getting too caught up. But at home, it's still hard. Brian's stuff is everywhere, and I can't put it away." "I understand," John said. "My house is empty too. Linda left, took Emily, and I'm still getting used to the silence." Kate looked at him with sympathy. "Any news? You said you were fighting for her." "Yeah," John nodded. "The court gave me temporary 50/50ths custody. Emily is with me 3 days a week now. But Linda isn't giving in. She's with this lawyer, Mark, and it looks like they're digging into me." "That's terrible," Kate said, her voice firmer. "She can't just take the baby and start a new life like you don't matter. Emily adores you, it's obvious. John smiled as he looked at Emily, who was now sliding down the slide. She is my world. I will do everything to have her with me, even if I have to fight in court. Kate nodded, her eyes serious. You're strong, John. I saw how you held up that night in the accident. Not everyone would have been able to call for help in that condition. You held on too, he said. You lost your husband, but you're still here, working, smiling. It's not easy. Kate looked away, her fingers tightening around the cup. Sometimes I pretend. I smile for the students, for the neighbors, but inside, it still hurts. I always think I could have noticed that something was wrong with Brian. He complained about being tired, but I thought it was just work. You couldn't have known, John said softly. A heart attack. It's like lightning. It's no one's fault. She looked at him, and gratitude flashed in her eyes. Thank you. You're the first one who doesn't tell me time heals. I'm tired of hearing that. John chuckled. Yes, they tell me that too. As if in a month I will forget that my family fell apart. They were silent for a moment, watching the children on the playground. Emily ran up, out of breath, her pigtails disheveled. Dad, can I have a drink? She asked, looking at Kate with curiosity. Of course, honey. John pulled a bottle of water out of his backpack. This is Kate, a friend of mine. Kate, this is Emily. Hi, Emily, Kate said, smiling. Cool pigtails. Do you like music? Emily nodded, swallowing her water. Yes, I sing in the choir at school. What do you do? I teach children to play the piano, Kate replied. Maybe you'll try it sometime. We'll see, John said, smiling. We'll have to deal with your fractions first. Emily rolled her eyes and ran back to the slide. Kate laughed. She's lovely. She looks just like you. Only the best part, I hope, John said, feeling the warmth of her words. Conversation with Kate was easy, as if they had known each other for years rather than weeks. Her sincerity contrasted with Linda's coldness, and John found himself enjoying her company. Kate finished her coffee and looked at her watch. I have to go. I have a lesson in an hour. But it was nice chatting. Maybe I'll see you again. Sure, John replied. If you're in the park, we're here a lot. Emily loves swings. Agreed, Kate smiled and stood up. Take care, John. And Emily. She left, and John remained on the bench, feeling a little lighter. Kate understood his pain without asking for anything in return, and that was new to him. He remembered how Linda had always looked to him for solutions, money, stability. Kate simply listened. John sat at the kitchen table, reviewing another report for Harris Construction. His new role as a consultant was becoming familiar, though he still missed his days on the job site. The brace was becoming less of an annoyance, and physical therapy was helping he could walk without a cane, though his back still ached at the end of the day. Emily was visiting for the weekend, and her laughter from the living room, where she was watching cartoons, filled the house with warmth. But thoughts of Linda and the upcoming trial were troubling him. Tony called closer to noon, his voice agitated. John, good news, he said. I got the information from a friend in the legal community. Mark Taylor, your favorite lawyer, has dumped Linda. It seems he's had enough and moved on to a new flame. Linda is panicking, calling him, but he's ignoring her. John froze, holding the phone. Seriously, he asked, feeling a mixture of relief and anger. So she's alone? It looks that way, Tony said, and that's good for us. She tried to paint herself as a stable mother living with her sister, but now her story is falling apart. We can use that at the next hearing. Judge Kelly doesn't like it when parents lie about their circumstances. What about Emily? John asked, his voice hardening. Linda still holds her half the time. If she's panicking, I don't want that to affect my daughter. I agree, Tony said. I'll file a motion to extend your time with Emily, citing Linda's instability. Do you have anything new? Her spending, her messages? John opened his laptop and checked their joint account. Linda had withdrawn money again, $1,000, listing it as personal expenses. He took a screenshot and sent it to Tony. She keeps spending, he said. $1,000 last week, another one now. It's not on Emily, I'm sure. Good, Tony said. That strengthens our case. Keep monitoring. And John, keep Emily close. Show the judge you're a stable parent. After the call, John went into the living room where Emily was drawing at the coffee table. Dad, look, I drew our house, she said, showing a sheet of paper with a bright picture. It's you, me, and, well, Mom is somewhere there. John noticed that Linda's figure was drawn small in the corner of the paper. Nice drawing, honey, he said, trying not to show his concern. How's Mom? Are you okay with her? Emily shrugged, not looking up from her pencils. She is sad all the time, and she talks on the phone a lot. Sometimes she screams. I don't know with whom. John felt a pang of anxiety. If you're uncomfortable, tell me, okay? You can always be with me. Emily nodded, but her eyes were serious. Dad, why did Mom leave? She doesn't love you. John sat down next to him, choosing his words carefully. Mom, she's just confused, Em. Sometimes adults do weird things. But you and I are a team, right? Yes, she smiled, and John hugged her, trying not to strain his back. That evening, after Emily had gone to bed, John received a text from Marge, a neighbor. Saw Linda outside Carol's house. She looked upset, almost crying. Something wasn't going well for her. John thanked Marge and forwarded the text to Tony. This confirmed Tony's claim that Mark had dumped Linda, and John felt a grim satisfaction. She had thought she could just leave for a new man and take Emily, but now her plans were ruined. The next day, Linda called unexpectedly. Her voice was tense, but she tried to sound calm. John, we need to talk, she said. I want us to resolve this peacefully, for Emily's sake. John clutched the phone, feeling his anger rise. Peacefully? You took my daughter, filed for divorce, and are living with Mark Taylor. And now that he's left you, you want to talk about peace? There was silence on the other end. Then Linda cleared her throat. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm at Carol's, and I'm not. Mark has nothing to do with this. Don't lie, Linda, John snapped. The neighbors saw you at his house. Emily saw him. Enough. I just want Emily to be okay, Linda said, her voice breaking. Maybe I'll come back. We could make things work. John gritted his teeth. He knew she wasn't saying this out of love or regret. Her lover had dumped her, and now she was looking for a backup plan. You're gone, Linda, he said coldly. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. I want Emily, and I'll fight for her in court. John, don't. Her voice became pleading. We can come to an agreement. Don't make it more difficult. You made it difficult, he said and hung up. His hands were shaking, but he felt he had done the right thing. Linda had tried to manipulate him, but he would not give in again. He wrote to Tony, Linda called, wants to fix it. I said I was going to court. What next? Tony responded a few minutes later. Good for you for not giving in. She's panicking. We're preparing the paperwork for the next hearing. Hang in there. John looked at Emily sleeping when he came in to check on her before bed. She was curled up under the covers, clutching her teddy bear. He adjusted the covers for her and quietly left. Linda might be trying to win him back, but he knew her motives were selfish. She wanted the stability he gave her, but not him. The next day, he met Kate again at the clinic for physical therapy. She looked a little more cheerful, with light makeup and a smile. How are you, John? She asked, sitting down next to you in the hall. Is Emily still with you? Yeah, for the weekend, he said, feeling her presence calm him. Linda called yesterday. She was trying to fix things, but I know her boyfriend dumped her. She just wants to get back to somewhere warm. Kate shook her head. It's low. She's using Emily to manipulate you. Don't let her. I won't, John said. I'm fighting for custody. And I started a new job. It's not remote, not like before, but it's keeping me afloat. That's cool, Kate said, her eyes lighting up. You don't give up. Brian was like that, always found a way. You remind me of him. John smiled, feeling the warmth from her words. And how are you? Does work save you? Yes, Kate nodded. I teach the kids to play the piano. It keeps me in the game. Tone, maybe Emily would like to try. I would give her a couple of lessons. She'll be thrilled, John said. Thank you, Kate. You make everything easier. She smiled, and they went to their sessions. John felt his friendship with Kate was becoming a crutch. Linda might try to win him back, but he knew his future lay with Emily, and perhaps with people like Kate, who saw him as more than just a wallet. John woke to the sound of his alarm, but for the first time in months, he didn't feel the usual knot of anxiety in his chest. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, illuminating his bedroom. He stretched, feeling the slight weight of the corset he still wore, but the pain in his back was almost unnoticeable. Today was a big day. Emily was spending the weekend with him, and he had planned a trip to the zoo, her favorite place. He was also looking forward to seeing Kate, who had agreed to join them. Their friendship had become an anchor for John over the past few weeks, and he was glad that Emily was starting to warm up to her. In the kitchen, he was making breakfast strawberry waffles, which Emily loved. She came down, still in her pajamas, with her hair in disarray. Dad, it smells delicious, she said, climbing onto a chair. Are we really going to the zoo? That's right, honey, John replied, setting a plate in front of her. And Kate's with us. You remember her, right? She taught you a few chords on the piano last time. Emily nodded, her eyes lighting up. She's cool. She said I could play a song for the school concert if I practiced. Then we'll have to practice, John smiled, enjoying her enthusiasm. Kate, the music teacher, had offered Emily a few free lessons after their last meeting in the park, and the girl had been delighted. John had seen how Kate had a way with children, and it reminded him of how caring she could be. After breakfast, John checked his email. Tony had sent a message. Linda is trying to drag this out, but her position is weak. The next hearing is in 2 weeks. Keep Emily around, it strengthens your case. John replied, Got it. She's with me today. Any news on her spending? Tony quickly wrote back, She withdrew another $800. Looks like it's for a hotel. We'll get to that soon. John gritted his teeth. Linda was still spending their money together, despite Mark Taylor dumping her. Her attempt to fix their relationship last week had been empty. She wanted to return to the stability John provided, but he wasn't about to forgive her. He saved a screenshot of the transaction and sent it to Tony, deciding to focus on Emily. Kate arrived at 10 in the morning, her dark hair pulled back into a loose ponytail and carrying a small backpack. Hi, John, she said, smiling. Ready for the zoo? I haven't been there since I was a kid. Hello, he replied, feeling the warmth of her presence. Emily is jumping up and down. Emily, Kate is here. Emily ran out of the living room, hugging Kate. Have you seen giraffes? They're so tall, she chattered. Of course, laughed Kate, but I like penguins better. They're as clumsy as I am at a dance. Emily giggled, and John noticed how easy Kate was getting along with her. They piled into the car, John at the wheel, Kate next to him, and Emily in the back, talking nonstop about animals. On the way, John turned on the radio, and Kate started humming an old song, something from the 90s. Emily joined in, and soon the three of them were singing along, laughing at John's off-key sing-alongs. At the zoo, Emily dragged them from enclosure to enclosure, excitedly pointing out the lions, elephants, and, of course, the giraffes. John walked slowly so as not to strain his back, but Kate stayed close, sometimes supporting his elbow when he stumbled. Are you holding up? She asked quietly as Emily looked at the penguins. Better than a month ago, John said. Physical therapy is helping. And, days like this give you strength. Kate smiled, her eyes soft. I understand. Emily is your engine. She's so alive. Yes, John said, looking at his daughter, who was trying to imitate the walk of a penguin. She's all I have. They stopped at an ice cream stand, and John bought 3 scoops chocolate for Emily, vanilla for Kate, and strawberry for himself. They sat on a bench, watching Emily draw in the sand with a stick. Kate looked at John, her face growing serious. "How's the trial going?" she asked. "You said Linda tried to get back." John sighed as he bit into his ice cream. "She called last week, wanting to fix it. But I know it's because her boyfriend, Mark, dumped her. She's in a panic, spending our money on hotels and spas. My lawyer says it's to our advantage. The next hearing is coming up, and I'm hoping to get more time with Emily." Kate shook her head. "She doesn't deserve her. You do everything for Emily and Linda. She only thinks about herself." "I thought so too," John said. "But sometimes I doubt it. Maybe I could have done more to keep her from leaving." "Don't blame yourself," Kate said firmly. "You were hurt, and she ran away instead of supporting you. It was her choice, not yours." John looked at her, feeling her words lift some of the weight off him. Kate always spoke directly, but without judgment, and that was new to him. Linda had always demanded solutions, stability, and Kate was simply there, supporting him. "Thank you," he said quietly. You make this easier." Kate smiled, her cheeks turning slightly pink. "You too. You know, after Brian, I thought I wouldn't be able to talk to anyone about the present. But with you, it's easy." They fell silent, but the silence was comfortable. Emily ran up, holding the animal quiz sheet she had been given at the zoo. "Kate, can you help me?" she asked. "I don't know what a panda eats." "Bamboo," Kate replied with a wink. "Want me to teach you a panda song? I made one up for my students." Emily jumped up and down with excitement, and Kate began to hum a simple tune as they walked toward the panda enclosure. John watched them, and a warm feeling spread through his chest. Kate was more than just a friend, she was becoming a part of their lives, and Emily could feel it. That evening, back home, John helped Emily with dinner. They made pizza from pre-made dough, laughing when the cheese fell on the floor. After dinner, Kate stayed to show Emily a few chords on the portable keyboard she had brought. "Look, it's C major," Kate said, pressing the keys. "Try it." Emily repeated, her fingers moving clumsily across the keys. "I did it," she exclaimed when the chord sounded clear. "Well done." Kate patted her on the shoulder. "Soon you will play better than me." John watched from the kitchen, feeling something change in him. Kate wasn't just teaching Emily music. She was giving her a joy she'd been missing with Linda. He remembered how Linda had always rushed Emily through her lessons or gotten angry if she got distracted. Kate was patient, and her smile was genuine. After Emily went to bed, John walked Kate to the door. "Thanks for today," he said. "Emily loves it, and I do too." Kate smiled, adjusting the strap of her backpack. "I had fun. You and Emily, you are special. If anything, I'm always here." "I know," John said, and their eyes met for a little longer than usual. He felt his heart beat faster, but he quickly looked away. "Good night, Kate." "Good night," she replied and walked into the darkness. John closed the door and leaned against the wall, feeling a mixture of emotions. Kate was becoming more than a friend to him, but he wasn't ready to admit it. His life was still a mess, the trial, Linda, the trauma. But the moments with Kate and Emily gave him a sense of family he hadn't felt with Linda, even at the best of times. Before going to bed, he checked his email. Tony had sent an update. "Linda has filed a petition for full custody, but her case is weak. We are prepared to rebut. Hang in there." John gritted his teeth. Linda had not given up, despite her failure with Mark. He wrote to Tony, "Make sure she doesn't win. Emily is my daughter." He looked at Emily's drawing on the fridge, the three figures on the beach. Maybe their family would look different now, with Kate instead of Linda. The thought was both terrifying and comforting. John knew it was too early to think about the future, but for the first time in months, he felt like he had a chance at a new life, not just for Emily, but for himself. John was awakened by the sound of the doorbell. He glanced at his watch, 8:15 am. Saturday. Emily was due in an hour, as Linda had promised to have her by 9. John put on his corset, ignoring the slight discomfort as usual, and went downstairs. When he opened the door, he saw Linda standing on the porch with Emily. The girl was holding a backpack. Her face was frowning. Linda looked tired. Her makeup was less perfect than usual, and there were shadows under her eyes. "You're early," John said, trying to keep his voice neutral. "I have things to do," Linda replied, adjusting her bag on her shoulder. "Emily, go to your dad. I'll pick you up tomorrow evening." Emily walked past John into the house without a word, not hugging him as she usually did. John saw her lips pressed together, and his heart sank. "Linda, what's going on?" he asked quietly, so Emily wouldn't hear. "She looks upset." "She's fine," Linda said, but her gaze was evasive. "It's just, kids are cranky. You know that." "I know my daughter," John said, his voice hardening. "If there's something wrong, tell me." Linda rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic, John. She's fine. Just take her and don't make a scene." She turned and walked away toward the car without looking back. John watched her go, feeling his anger boiling. He knew Linda was lying. Emily was never this quiet without a reason. Closing the door, he walked into the living room, where Emily was sitting on the couch, staring at the floor. "Hey, honey," he said, sitting down next to her. "What's wrong? Aren't you happy to see me?" Emily shrugged, fiddling with the strap of her backpack. "I'm glad," she muttered. "It's just, Mom's angry all the time, and she says I have to stay with her because you're sick." John felt the blood pounding in his temples. "She said that?" he asked, trying to sound calm. "Emily, I'm not sick. I'm injured, but I'm getting better. And I'll always be your dad, no matter what she says." Emily looked at him, her eyes full of tears. "She said that you wouldn't be able to take care of me, and that we would move in with Aunt Carol forever." John clenched his fists, but forced himself to smile. Listen, no one is taking you away from me. We're a team, remember? And Mom, she's just upset. Grown-ups sometimes say stupid things when they're angry." Emily nodded, but her face remained serious. "Dad, can I stay with you? I don't want to go to Aunt Carol's, and I don't like it when Mom yells." "Shouting?" John frowned. "At you?" "Not at me," Emily said, fiddling with her sleeve. "On the phone. She thinks I can't hear, but I know she's arguing with that guy, Mark." And then she cries. John felt his heart tighten. He hugged Emily, careful not to strain his back. "You don't have to listen to this, honey. If you're scared or sad, tell me, okay? We'll fix this." She clung to him, and John realized that Linda was losing control not only over herself, but also over the situation with Emily. He wrote to Tony. "Emily says Linda is arguing with Mark and crying. Wants Emily to live with her sister. Can we use this?" Tony responded almost immediately. "Yes, it shows her instability. Write down everything Emily says, but carefully, without pressure." John decided to distract Emily and suggested that she bake cookies. They fussed around the kitchen, mixing the dough, and her mood began to improve. "Dad, can I invite Kate?" Emily asked, sprinkling sugar on the dough. "She promised to show me how to play a song about the stars." "Of course," John smiled. "I'll call her." Kate answered on the second ring. "John, how are you?" Her voice was warm, and John felt the tension ease. "Emily wants to see you," he said. "We're baking cookies. Would you like to join us?" "Cookies? I'm in," Kate laughed. "I'll be there in half an hour." Kate arrived with a small keyboard under her arm. Emily rushed to her, hugging her like an old friend. "Kate, have you brought the piano?" she exclaimed. "Yeah," Kate replied, setting the keyboard down on the table. "Ready to learn a song about the stars?" They sat in the living room, and Kate began showing Emily simple chords. John watched them, feeling the house come alive. Kate was patient, adjusting Emily's fingers on the keys and praising her for each correct sound. Emily beamed, and John realized she hadn't smiled like that with Linda in a long time. "Dad, look, I almost got it," Emily shouted as the melody began to sound like a song. "You're a star, Em," John said, clapping his hands. Kate winked at him, and he felt something warm spread in his chest. This was more than friendship. He was starting to see Kate as someone who could be a part of their lives. After class, Kate helped John clean the kitchen while Emily painted in her room. "She's so talented," Kate said, drying the dishes. "And so much like you. Stubborn, but kind." "That's true," John smiled. "Thank you for coming. She needs it. And I do too." Kate looked at him, her eyes soft. "You don't have to thank me. I like being with you. After Brian, I thought I'd never find joy. But you and Emily, you're like the light at the end of the tunnel." John felt his heart beat faster. He wanted to say something, but the words were stuck. Instead, he just nodded, and Kate smiled as if she understood. That evening, when Emily went to bed, John received a call from Tony. "John, news," he said. "Linda's filed for full custody, but her case is falling apart. Judge Kelly asked for an accounting of her living expenses, and we know she's not staying with her sister. Plus her spending habits, we've got almost $5,000 a month on hotels and restaurants. It looks like she's spending everything she can before the divorce." "She wants to take Emily," John said, his voice hardening. "Emily said today that Linda was fighting with Mark and crying. Em's scared." "That's gold," Tony replied. "Write down everything she says, but don't push her. The judge will take the child's opinion into account, especially if Emily wants to be with you." John wrote Emily's words down in his notebook, as Tony had suggested, trying not to feel like a traitor. He knew it was for her own good. Linda was creating an unstable environment, and Emily could sense it. The next day, when Linda came to pick up Emily, the girl was slow in packing her backpack. "Dad, can I stay?" she asked quietly as Linda waited by the car. John crouched down in front of her, ignoring the pain in his back. "Soon, honey. I'm working on it. You can always call me, okay?" Emily nodded, hugged him, and walked to the car. Linda didn't even look at John as she slammed the door. He watched them drive away, feeling his resolve grow stronger. Emily had made her choice. She wanted to be with him, and he wouldn't let her down. He wrote to Kate, "Thanks for yesterday. Emily adores you. Want to come over for coffee tomorrow?" Kate replied, "I'd love to. You and Emily are my best day out." John smiled as he looked at the message. John straightened his shirt as he stood outside the courthouse. His corset was hidden beneath his jacket, but a slight ache in his back was evident, especially after sitting for so long. Today was Emily's second custody hearing, and he felt his nerves on edge. It had been a month since the first hearing, and Tony had insisted that their case was strong. Linda had been lying about where she lived, spending their money, and creating an unstable environment for Emily. John hoped Judge Kelly would see that. Tony met him at the entrance, his face serious, but his eyes shining with confidence. "Ready, John?" he asked, straightening his tie. "We have everything. The statements, the neighbors' statements, even Emily's words that you wrote down. Linda is on thin ice." "I want Emily with me," John said, clutching the handle of his briefcase. She said to herself she was afraid of Linda. That should mean something. "So," Tony nodded, "Judge Kelly takes into account a child's opinion, especially at 8 years old. Let's go show you're the best parent." In the courtroom, John took a seat next to Tony, trying not to look at Linda. She sat across from him, alone, without Mark Taylor. Her face was pale, her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and her dress looked like she had chosen it in a hurry. John noticed that she was avoiding his gaze, fiddling with her purse. She seemed lost without Mark, and part of John felt sorry for her, but he quickly reminded himself that she had made her choice. Judge Kelly walked in, her gray hair neatly combed and her eyes as sharp as ever. She flipped through the papers and began. "The case is Clarkson v. Clarkson. Emily Clarkson's permanent custody hearing. Mr. Brown, you have the floor." Tony stood up, his voice firm. "Your Honor, my client, John Clarkson, has proven himself to be a caring and stable parent. Despite the trauma he suffered in the accident, he continues to work as a counselor, undergoes rehabilitation, and provides his daughter with a warm environment. Mrs. Clarkson, on the other hand, left the family without notice, restricted the father's access to the child, and spent the family funds on personal expenses, including hotels and restaurants, unrelated to Emily's welfare. Tony handed the judge a folder of evidence: bank statements, screenshots of Linda's texts, neighbors' accounts of her stay with Mark Taylor. John watched as the judge leafed through the documents, her face unreadable. Linda stood up, her voice shaking. "Your Honor, I admit I made mistakes, but I acted for Emily. John was seriously injured, and I wasn't sure if he could take care of her. I want her to have stability." John's jaw tightened as she spoke. She was trying to make him look incompetent again, but her voice was unconvincing. Judge Kelly looked at her over her glasses. "Mrs. Clarkson, you claim to be staying with your sister, but the evidence suggests you were spending time with another man," she said. "You were also spending significant amounts from a joint account. How does that square with your claims of stability?" Linda blushed, her hands clutching her purse. It was a temporary difficulty. I'm living with my sister now. I can provide Emily with everything she needs." "Your Honor," Tony interjected, "we've provided a report confirming that Mrs. Clarkson continues to withdraw money from the joint account, including recent hotel and spa expenses. In addition, Emily has told her father that she feels uncomfortable with her mother's arguments and emotional instability." Judge Kelly nodded, making a note. "I want to hear the child's opinion. Miss Davis, bring Emily." John felt his heart beat faster. He hadn't seen Emily in court and wasn't sure how she would cope. The social worker, Miss Davis, brought Emily into the courtroom. The girl looked small in her blue dress, her hair neatly braided. She looked at John and he winked at her, trying to reassure her. "Emily," Judge Kelly said softly, "tell me what it's like to live with your mom and dad. Where do you like it best?" Emily fidgeted with the hem of her dress, her voice quiet. "I'm fine with my dad. He helps me with my homework, we bake cookies, and Kate teaches me to play the piano. My mom, she's often sad, and she yells on the phone. I don't want to upset her, but I'm better with my dad." John felt a lump in his throat. Linda lowered her head, her face growing even paler. The judge nodded, writing something down. "Thank you, Emily," she said. "You can go." Miss Davis led Emily away, and the courtroom fell silent. Judge Kelly leafed through the papers and looked at both sides. "Based on the evidence and the child's views, I will maintain 50/50 joint custody," she said. "However, Mrs. Clarkson, your actions raise questions about your stability. I recommend that you seek family counseling if you wish to seek greater custody in the future. Mr. Clarkson, continue to provide your daughter with a stable environment. The next hearing is in 3 months." She banged the gavel, and John exhaled. It wasn't a complete victory, but Emily had made it clear she wanted to be with him, and the judge took that into account. Tony slapped his arm. "Excellent, John. Her words are our trump card. Linda is on the edge." Linda left the room without saying a word. John saw her shoulders slump and felt a moment of pity, but quickly pushed it away. She had chosen this path. That evening, he picked Emily up from social services, where she had been taken after the trial. She ran to him, hugging him tightly. "Dad, did I say everything right?" she asked, her eyes full of worry. "You did well, honey," John said, stroking her head. "You told the truth, and that's the main thing." They went home, and John decided to have a little celebration. He ordered a pizza and called Kate, inviting her to join him. "Celebrating?" Kate asked when she arrived with a box of cupcakes. "How did it go in court?" "We still have joint custody," John said as Emily set the table with paper plates. "But Emily told the judge she wants to be with me. That's a big step." Kate smiled, her eyes sparkling. "That's cool, John. Emily knows who her real hero is." Emily ran up holding a slice of pizza. "Kate, are you staying? We're going to watch a cartoon." "Of course," Kate replied, winking at John. "What cartoon?" "Zootopia," Emily exclaimed. "There's a police bunny in there. He's so funny." They settled into the living room, and John watched Emily and Kate laugh at the cartoon sloth. He felt the house fill with a warmth that hadn't been there with Linda. Later, when Emily fell asleep on the couch, John and Kate covered her with a blanket and went into the kitchen. "She adores you," John said, pouring coffee. "And I'm glad you're here too." Kate looked at him, her cheeks turning slightly pink. "I'm glad too, John. You and Emily. You make my life better." Their eyes met, and John felt something click inside. He wasn't ready to name it, but he knew that Kate had become more than a friend to him. John stood by the kitchen window, looking out into the backyard where Emily and Kate were playing with water guns. It was a hot summer in Chicago, and the sound of their laughter mixed with the splashing water filled the house with a joy he hadn't felt in a long time. It had been 3 months since the last custody hearing, and John's life was beginning to settle into a new rhythm. He'd gotten rid of the brace a month ago, though his back still hurt when he spent too much time on his laptop. His job as a consultant at Harris Construction had become stable, and Bob had even hinted at a possible promotion if John continued to cope. But the main thing was that Emily was happy, and that was more important than any contract. The 50/50th joint custody arrangement remained in place, but Emily increasingly asked to stay with John. Linda, after her failure with Mark Taylor and her feeble attempts to regain John's affections, became increasingly distant. Her spending from the joint account stopped when Tony filed a motion to freeze assets until the divorce was finalized. Judge Kelly ordered Linda to attend couples counseling, but she attended irregularly, and John heard from Carol that Linda had moved into a small apartment in an attempt to start over. John poured himself some coffee and went out onto the porch where Kate was teaching Emily how to shoot a water pistol at a plastic bottle. "Dad, look, I got it," Emily screamed as the bottle fell, her face glowing, her wet pigtails stuck to her cheeks. "Sniper," John said, clapping his hands. "Kate, are you preparing her for the army?" Kate laughed, pushing her wet hair out of her face. "Only to the Water Warriors squad. She's already beaten me." Emily ran up to John, hugging him, not caring that she was getting his shirt wet. "Kate said I can play at the school concert. She's teaching me a song," she said, her eyes shining with excitement. "That's awesome, honey," John replied, patting her head. "I can't wait to hear it." Kate came over, wiping her hands on a towel. "She's a talent, John. In a couple of months, she'll be playing like a pro." "It's all you," he said, smiling. "You work miracles." Kate shrugged, but her cheeks turned pink. "I just love music. And Emily, she makes it easy." They sat on the porch while Emily ran to get more water for the gun. John looked at Kate, feeling a familiar warmth spreading in his chest. She had become an integral part of their lives over the past few months. They met almost every week, either at the park, at his house where Kate taught Emily music, or at a cafe where they just chatted. John knew his feelings for her had grown beyond friendship, but he was still afraid to take a step. His divorce from Linda was almost final, but he didn't want to rush Kate, who was still grieving the loss of Brian. "How are you?" he asked, sipping his coffee. "Work, lessons, everything okay?" Kate nodded, looking at Emily, who was trying to hit another bottle. "Yes, the kids at school keep me on my toes. And, being with you is like a breath of fresh air. After Brian, I thought I'd never find joy. But you and Emily, you changed that." John felt his heart beat faster. "You made a difference too," he said quietly. "For Emily and me, I don't know how I would have coped without you." Kate looked at him, her eyes soft but with a sparkle in them. "You could have done it, John. You're strong, but I'm glad I'm here." They fell silent, but the silence was warm as a sunny day. Emily ran up, holding an empty pistol. "Dad, Kate, let's play together," she shouted. "Only if I get the biggest gun," John said, standing up. Kate laughed, and the three of them began running around the yard, splashing each other with water. John felt almost healthy, although after a few minutes of playing, his back began to hurt. He sat down on the grass, watching Kate and Emily chase each other, and realized that this was his new family. That evening, after dinner, John received a call from Tony. "John, the divorce is official," he said. "There's still joint custody, but Linda's not trying to fight it anymore. She agreed to your terms for dividing up the property, and she really seems to be out of it living alone, without Mark, and the neighbors say she looks lost." "What about Emily?" John asked, his voice growing tense. "Emily is with you 3 days a week, as she has been," Tony replied. "But the judge noted that her preference for being with you could affect the future. If Linda continues this way, you could file for full custody." John exhaled. "Thank you, Tony. You did the impossible." "You did it," Tony said. "You showed me you were a father I could count on. Now live your life." After the call, John went into Emily's room, where she was practicing on the keyboard that Kate had left with them. "Dad, listen," she said, playing a simple melody. "This is the song Kate showed me." "You're a good boy," John said, sitting down next to her. "Kate is proud of you, and so am I." Emily smiled, but her face became more serious. "Dad, Mom cried again today. She said she misses me, but I don't want to live with her all the time. Can I stay with you and Kate?" John hugged her, feeling a lump in his throat. "We're working on it, honey. You'll always be with us." Kate stayed for dinner, and the three of them watched Zootopia, laughing at the jokes. When Emily fell asleep on the couch, John and Kate carried her to bed. In the kitchen, while they were washing the dishes, John made up his mind. "Kate," he said, wiping his plate, "I mean, you've become like family to Emily and me. I don't know what to call it, but I want you to be with us, not just as a friend." Kate froze, holding the sponge. Then she turned to him, her eyes shining. "John, I want that too. After Brian, I was afraid to open up again. But you and Emily, you're like my home." He stepped closer, ignoring the slight pain in his back, and took her hand. "We can go slowly," he said, "but I want to try. For us, for Emily." Kate nodded, squeezing his hand in response. "I want to try too." Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even click to the next one.